Well, this is a great instance of President Trump, the administration, really seeing around the corner. These robot dogs, these humanoid robots, these power inverters, all of this is going to be critical to the economy of tomorrow and to our national security.
I want to start with something small, a photograph, black and white, dated 1867. It shows a street in St. Louis, Missouri, a broad, immaculate boulevard flanked by enormous neoclassical buildings, columns 3 stories tall, ornate stonework, arched windows stretching 20, 30 feet high, and standing in front of these impossible structures that would cost hundreds of millions of dollars to build even today, are people in rough clothing, muddy boots, improvised frontier wear. They look like settlers. They look like people who arrived recently, people who are still figuring out where they are. And I thought, who built those buildings? That question sounds simple. It isn't. The official explanation that American settlers, barely 2 generations removed from log cabins and dirt roads, constructed what were effectively the grandest buildings in the world across dozens of cities simultaneously, without advanced engineering schools, without a trained architectural labor force, and in many cases without coherent records of construction. The official explanation collapses here, not under the weight of accusation, under the weight of arithmetic. So I started looking, and the deeper I looked, the stranger it became. Because this wasn't just St. Louis. It wasn't just America. It wasn't even just the 19th century. The pattern repeats with unsettling precision on every continent, across hundreds of cities spanning at least 300 years of what we call modern history. Grand buildings without builders, established cities without founding populations, infrastructure without engineers. And in nearly every case, nearly every single case, a curious absence of transitional documentation. No blueprints, no payroll records, no generational accounts of the work in progress. No grandfather telling his grandson, I helped build that dome. I cut that marble. I laid that foundation. The silence was deafening, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me introduce you to a concept that historians call settlement. Settlement, as we understand it, describes the process by which people move into an uninhabited or sparsely populated region and, over generations, build the infrastructure of civilization. Roads, courts, markets, cathedrals, administrative buildings, hospitals. The process is slow, messy, and extensively documented because it involves thousands of ordinary people making extraordinary decisions in real time. And those people write letters, keep diaries, complain to their governments, and leave behind the sprawling, contradictory, thoroughly human paper trail of genuine historical process. Now look at what we actually have in the historical record for dozens of major world cities in the 18th and early 19th centuries. Chicago, incorporated as a town in 1833, a city in 1837. By 1893, 56 years later, it hosted the world's Columbian Exposition in a complex of gleaming white neoclassical palaces, so vast and so perfectly executed that visitors called it the White City, and many openly wept at its beauty. 56 years. For context, it took the city of Florence approximately 200 years to complete the Cathedral of Santa Maria del Fiore. Chicago allegedly produced something comparable in scope, in finish, in architectural sophistication in less than 6 decades by a population that was still in living memory, sleeping in tents. This raises a simple but critical question. Who taught them? Not the concept of architecture, not the aspiration toward grandeur. I mean the specific technical material knowledge required to quarry, transport, cut and assemble stone on that scale, to engineer load-bearing arches without modern cranes, to produce the mathematically precise decorative programs that adorn these buildings from foundation to cornice. That knowledge takes generations to develop and transmit. It lives in apprenticeship traditions, in guild systems, in family lineages of craftsmen who pass their techniques from father to son across centuries. Where are those lineages? And that's where the inheritance problem becomes impossible to ignore. I'm not the first person to notice the gap scattered across the historiographical record, in the footnotes of academic papers, in the fine print of municipal incorporation documents, in the margin notes of 19th century land surveys. There are names, the same names, recurring across cities, across continents, across what should be entirely separate and unconnected historical processes. I want to be careful here. I am not naming conspirators. I am not pointing fingers. What I am doing is asking, why do certain family names appear at the founding moments of so many major institutions, so many major cities, so many major financial structures, in so many different parts of the world at virtually the same historical moment? The 1800s were a period of what historians blandly describe as consolidation, land consolidation, banking consolidation, industrial consolidation. What they mean, what the documents actually show, when you read them carefully.
Today's show is called Letter N is 13th on 3-1 day, 31st of July, 2026.
Yeah, in the West, we say 7 for the month first. So the whole month of July, we July to each other every day because, we call it the 7th month. And then, but we do call August, the 8th month. So that'll be interesting to discover further into the show. But yeah, regarding the date, it's 3-1.7 in the East because they do day first, then month, then year in natural order of things. But since time's not natural anyway, does it even matter? But what's funny is that 3-1.7 in the East is St. Patrick's Day in the West. That's kind of funny. So anyway, could you please tell me why is it relevant that N is 13th? Because if you count the letters, it should be 14th. So are you like can't count, or what's the story here? There's 26 letters in the alphabet, right?
Well, if you don't count J.
Okay. All right. So we'll get to that later, why we don't count J. Let's go ahead and get to the real deep doo-doo behind the letter N being 13th and all.
All right, so the letter N is the inversion of the letter U, and that's lowercase.
Okay, so what happens to the letter N when it grows up and becomes that big angular form in the uppercase?
Oh, it looks like a Z.
Yeah, it's like a Z sideways, or the Z is an N sideways. It's not clear what's what here. So what's interesting is the lowercase n is curvy, like an angel, and the uppercase n is all angles, like an angle, which both of those words have the same sounds and letters. It's just there's a zh added with angel. All right, let's move on and talk about the J.
When the J is considered as undefined, the base countable alphabet from A to Z is 25 countable letters. From A to N is 13. From Z backwards to N is 13. The letter N is the central axis of the alphabet of 15 definable... 25 definable letters. Yeah, I was wondering where we were going with that.
Let's get to the 25th letter.
Oh, the Z. So the Z is 25, which sums to 7, where the sound and phonetic spelling of N, E-N, is voiced and heard and seen in the word seven. The Z, the word Zion, and the axis of the contentions of material form, letter N, are the basis of the crime and the disclosure in plain sight.
Like the crime of ending everything at 7. And that's like severing the child, the end, the axis. The endings of 7 are primarily a week. That's because they're designed to weaken us. A week of 7 days is for the weak. Why do we die at 7 and start over? At least we should go to 9 and start over. So these endings of 7 throughout our philosophy and all the theologies and ideologies and lines of thinking, they're everywhere. They're pervasive. And the letter Z is actually 2 half 7s that join together, or 2 complete 7s that run across each other. and they meet at the center, or the axis of the Z. The changeover after the war from the ether era was a civilization that was antithetical to our AC, radio, Wi-Fi intervention of our natural air that's energetic and intelligent.
A grand larceny done with injustice and no tears in the effort to contain the essence the human contains and occupies, and then use them as experimental research and sources of reality within the matching earth realm that is created in parity with the animals, plants, and the most high material for mankind. This next section is called Urge, Motive, Desire, Will, and Fire. Desire from Latin, desidere, is meaning long for, wish for, demand, expect. Anticipare, prepare for. The original sense being the sequence of what our starhood will bring with us. What? The word consider is about the stars. Con is a form of com, it means with and together. And situs, the genitive sidereus, which is a heavenly body, a star, a constellation.
All together now.
All together, we come together to gather as a heavenly body cut from the stars. Similar in nature and spelling to desire from Latin desidere. Thus, the root sitter inside the word consider shows the deeper sense and context of the word.
You know, the digits and the letters come together, and the J is not counted because it was put in there to indicate the Christ essence, or the soul, power, intelligence that operates each anatomy. So the J is actually a hook for fish, and when we say the word J, we have to puff our lips like a fish. So it's all done as a type of deep, subtle persuasion over civilizations and centuries. So within the digits and the letters, it's all revealed, especially in the letters A through T, which is an acronym for all things, because wherever you're at, you're engaging with all things. And that's what at really means. So the letters A through T, when we don't count the J, are 1 through 19. So 19 letters in total, or the indication of 1 through 9, the base reduction of A to I. So A to I is a question, am I? AI is a question, am I? And IA, the other direction, is a statement, I am. IA means I am. So we're going to have a little look at these digits from 0 to 9. And then when the digits start over again at 10, because 10 is actually spoken as 1 0. That means you're a single zero at letter K, and that's a starting point of your maturity, the 0 point of your entire life, from when you were non-judgmental as a child and you developed judgments as an adult. So at 10, you start over, and then it's 10 through 19. So you do the whole 0 through 9 journey twice, from A through I and K through T.
So 10 through 19 is a repeat of what we are at 0.
When we were.
When we were 0 to 9. It is awkward. The HI, high, equals 8, 9. The N game, EN game.
So that happens in the word high story, which we're taught to pronounce story. So we pronounce it in a funny way because we're told to. But when we say histories, we can hear stories in the sound. So if we said the I with the I sound vowel, the I vowel sound, instead of the I vowel sound, then it wouldn't be history, it would be high story. So the high story is indicated in the spelling, but not in the sound. So the spelling is H-I story. That's the 8-9 story.
So the high equals 8, 9, the end game. We found the secret to life and death in the words we say and write. All of history and our purpose and format are described in the sounds and symbols. This next section is called, Is There Any Real Hidden Codes in the Word Israel?
Well, it seems like there's real things and made up things in anything that we look at. So the first thing I notice about the word Israel is what you hear in your ears. You hear is, and then you hear real. So if you were making a sentence that included those two words together, is real, if you said them together, it's like saying Israel. You know, because the way Americans say it, we say our words quick and run them together. So we say Israel. So that sounds like is real. So that's the first thing I would notice is the two bass sounds that come to our ears when we speak to each other. So then you have to ask yourself, what does our brain think after years of living and looking at words and processing them? The word is means, and the word real means. So you see how there's an attachment to both of those words. So even though they're being run together, there's a subtle persuasion in your mind and tugs at your emotions about your ideas and feelings toward the word is and real.
Let's break the word Israel down in 3 parts, is, Ra, and El. The foundation is IZ, or your eye, and zeal. And a chat partner member came in and said, I don't understand. And we said, before we had senses and material form, there was silence and stillness. IZ is the schism in Greek terminology. When we were in a purely ethereal state, it was dark, then light, then blue, which is water, air, ether, and plasma.
You see, the sound of is that you say and that comes to your ears is the picture of I and Z. So I is a vertical line of perfect virtue, and Z is a schismed line that goes to the right and the left. It's also 2 sevens merged together as a symbol. So this is a schism and a map to where we came from and where we're going. Here's some more on how it was in the beginning.
It was dark, then light, then blue. The water, the air, the ether, the plasma. Is IZ is the foundation of Israel. And our chat member said, blue is the universal color for good. And we said, for water and air, the bond.
Blue is.
Blue for water and air, the bond that forms reality against our thoughts and emotions. El inside Israel is the capstone of the word, and it means the masculine force of discovery and recreation of the source, which is what came before the is. Is the feminine force. And they responded with an image that shows the KJV declaring El is
Elion. So a demon or a devil. So there's a Bible humper in the chat room who calls itself KJV number. And this entity is always spreading disinformation and distortions, almost a direct mimic of the many versions of the Bible itself. So she was following the conversation. Well, she calls herself a she, so I said she. And then she said that any reference to El meant Elion. But of course, she's always mean, nasty, and saying negative things. So it really doesn't matter whether she has an open mind or not, but I just thought I would share that explanation.
And our response with Ra is tied and immersed to R. The root R means a thing, indicating a life form, and man is the most high life form or thing. Ra is the sun, And AR and RA. R is the mini sun inside every pulsing heart of an animal or man.
That's so cool. So is the feminine, L is the masculine, and Ra, which everybody thought was the sun in the sky, is connected to the mini sun in every animal or human being's heart. So when you talk about the soul, you're also talking about the SOL in the sky and their connection. This monkey on our back, if you say it slower, it's the mon, mine, key.
And our chat member said, decode KJV for me, the human, not the name. And our response, cage the AV. AV is the gender formatted natural design universe, known since Hindu times. The Star of David was lifted from Sanskrit. The original Hebrew Israelites were against the Star of David symbol. And now we're going to look at the word and the idea of reason.
Is there a reason for our existence as energetic, physical, mental beings? Is it a ray of the sun? Are we each a ray of the sun? Or is it random and accidental? If so, how does the complexity of the contentious format of our material form and its coherency stay maintained and powered in a continuum? Is it really possible there is no design and no designer of reality? Do academics of definitions have power over all mentalities? How does the complexity of contentions that cause our form stay maintained and powered? Well, that ended that conversation. Now let's move on to Matt.
And Matt said, another thing, would you say speech, like most of it, like 90% happens in the head, the inner speech? Let's say I've been conditioned to speak badly about myself or whine, inner speech wise. One changes that by applying will and fire, right?
Well, speech starts inside your mind before you say anything. But the most powerful tool in all the universe is when we pierce the air with our speech and bend reality and form our own personal reality. Everyone's living in their own complex arrangement that makes their reality. And it all comes from speech. But let's look at the journey of speech from the beginning.
Nothingness, thought, core muscle, air to larynx, tongue muscle, lip muscles, and air piercings with speech. If you get tired of repeating foul language in your head, then you will, unless you think you are a sad victim in a cruel world of perpetrators. And now let's look at soul, SOL, and soul, SOUL. The soul is in your heart and in the sky. You are the variant. It is so easy that every animal knows it, except humans. The you is the urn that saves every breath and word or action and effect that you ever had. It is saved and accumulated and aggregated to your every now moment. All you give is returned for you to take. The simplest format strips every complexity.
Now we look at tomorrow, which is 8.1 in the west and 1.8 in the east. It will be the first day of August. So August in foundation, the word, is AU. And then the hard sound of G, or GA. And then the letters US for us, and then T. A in foundation, and T at the roof. 1 through 19 of all things. The U disappears because when you understand the air, then you can touch the invisible. So the August is AU, the non-decayable, plus the us leading to T, which is the tau. So it's all plus Ga plus us, T.
The authentic comes from the gust, meaning the force intelligent power of the plasma, air, and the ether, which is ether. 1881 equals 8, and voices as the silent sound of breath, since it cancels the 8 and the 1, leaving only essence. Spoken by men like this: 8 to 1 versus 1 to 8. All plus Ga plus us and the T means essence, ether, mankind, Tao, which is perfected. August and Zion are names of a human, and that is why the demons took them as names of archetypes, so as to mold a new reality of what you are. There are endless validations in the language and the sounds of speech.
I take that point seriously. I want to take it seriously. But the Gothic cathedrals were built over centuries by known guilds with documented apprenticeship traditions, with extensive ecclesiastical records detailing costs, labourers, architects, and construction phases. The Roman aqueducts were the product of a 200-year-old imperial engineering tradition backed by the largest professional military and civic apparatus the ancient world had ever produced. The pyramids, whatever their true origin, were the demonstrable focus of the entire organizational capacity of a centralized state. The cities of the 19th century have none of that. What they have instead is something more puzzling: world-spanning simultaneity. Consider what would have been required for the official story to be true. Dozens of cities on multiple continents would have had to independently develop within the same 50-year window the same architectural vocabulary, the same pilasters, the same cornices, the same dome proportions, the same decorative programs, without a common educational institution, without a common professional organization, without a common government mandate, and without modern communication technology capable of transmitting detailed technical specifications across oceans in real time. The evidence suggests something much larger was at work, not inspiration, not coincidence, coordination, and coordination at that scale requires an organizing intelligence. It requires people who know each other, who share information, who have agreed explicitly or implicitly on a common framework. It requires, in short, a network. The 13 families, or however many there were, and I choose 13 as a round number that appears across multiple independent research traditions, not as a definitive count. These families were that network. Not because I can prove it, but because if you remove them from the equation, you are left with a historical impossibility. The spontaneous, simultaneous, coordinated emergence on a world-spanning scale of an identical high civilization, ex nihilo, with no paper trail. Choose your impossibility carefully. There is a category of historical event that researchers call a rupture. A moment when the normal accumulation of documents, the continuous paper trail of administration and commerce, and personal correspondence that makes historical reconstruction possible simply stops, and then, after a gap of variable length, starts again, but differently, with different names in charge, with different institutional frameworks in place, with different assumptions about what the recent past contained. The 1800s are full of ruptures. The historical record for most major American cities effectively begins somewhere between 1820 and 1870. Before that, there is something, fragments, claims, contested accounts, and then there is a gap, and then there is a fully formed city with fully formed institutions and a fully formed story about how it got there. The official explanation acknowledges the gap and calls it frontier conditions. Documentation was sparse, record keeping was informal, fires destroyed archives. all of that is true. Fires did destroy archives, but it is worth asking which archives and who benefited from their destruction. The Great Chicago Fire of 1871, the San Francisco earthquake and fire of 1906, the burning of Washington, D.C. in 1814, the destruction of the Library of Alexandria centuries earlier. We treat each of these as isolated disasters. What if they were part of a pattern? Not of deliberate arson necessarily, I am not making that claim, but of a systematic, possibly structural vulnerability in the places where the prior world's documentation was concentrated. What if the most important fires in history all burned the same category of thing? The deeper I went into this question, the more I noticed what was conspicuously absent from every surviving archive: evidence of transition. Not the destination. We have plenty of documents describing the world as it was after the great reorganization of the 1800s. Not the origin. We have in scattered form tantalizing fragments of what the prior world may have looked like, but the process of getting from one to the other. The mechanism of transfer, that mechanism is missing. Not incomplete, not poorly documented, missing, and in its place, in archive after archive, city after city, country after country, we find the same thing. A formal document of acquisition, signed by representatives of a small number of family dynasties, establishing legal title to assets whose prior ownership is described in terms so vague as to be meaningless. Unclaimed land, abandoned property, territories without recognized sovereign. Someone built those territories. Someone lived in those buildings. Someone designed those drains and those aqueducts and those precisely oriented plazas, and then, officially, they were gone, and the families moved in. I want to end somewhere different from where most investigations like this one end. Most of them end in anger, in accusation, in the naming of villains and the allocation of blame. That's not where I am. Because the more I sat with this material, the buildings without builders, the cities without founders, the archives without the documents that should have been there, the more I found myself arriving at a question that isn't about power at all. It's about knowledge. Because here is what the 13 families, whatever we call them, however many there were, here is what they may have inherited, along with the land and the buildings and the legal frameworks. They may have inherited understanding, specific technical material understanding of how the prior world worked, how the buildings were built, what the infrastructure was actually designed to do, how the systems, economic, architectural, agricultural, medical, how the systems fit together, and what did they do with it? That is the question I cannot answer. And I've tried. Did they preserve it? Is there, somewhere in a private archive, in a family vault, in a library that is not listed in any public catalogue, a body of knowledge that would rewrite everything we think we know about the history of civilization? Is that knowledge still intact? Is it being used? Is it being slowly and selectively reintroduced into the public domain through academic institutions and technological breakthroughs attributed to discovery rather than recovery? Or did they lose it? That possibility is darker in some ways. That the families scrambling to consolidate their holdings in the chaotic aftermath of whatever event or process emptied the old world cities may have grabbed the physical assets without fully grasping the intellectual ones. That the knowledge of how to replicate what they inherited may have been more fragile than the stone and iron they were inheriting. That the prior civilization, whatever it was, encoded its knowledge in forms the inheritors could not read. That we are living right now in a world built on foundations we don't fully understand, inside systems whose original purpose we have forgotten, and that the families themselves, the supposed masterminds, the supposed controllers of the hidden architecture of history, may simply be the curators of a museum they cannot explain. Rich beyond imagination, powerful beyond precedent, and fundamentally irreducibly lost. Once you see it, you can't unsee it. The grandeur of the buildings, The absence of the builders, the names in the founding documents, the fires that took the archives, the gap in the record where the transition should be, the worldwide simultaneity that coordination alone cannot explain, the knowledge that should be there and isn't, the silence where the explanation should live. The evidence suggests something much larger than any single family, any single conspiracy, any single historical rupture. It suggests a world before our world, a civilization before our civilization, a story before the story we've been told, and it suggests that when that world ended, however it ended, for whatever reason it ended, 13 families, more or less, were standing closest to the door when everything went quiet, and they walked in, and they took what they could carry, and they have been living on that inheritance ever since. Whether they understand what they're holding, whether any of us will ever find out what it is, whether the door is still somewhere in some archive behind some acquisition record waiting to be opened again, I don't know. I don't think anyone does.